Would you like to win some free fishing tackle? Well, this month we just gave away a brand new spinning reel, a one-of-a-kind spinning reel. This next month we're giving away a ton more tackle. We do it every single month. It's just one of the perks of being an insider member. For you current members, make sure to go log into the community. That's community.saltstrong.com. That's the private community we built. We've just added a lot of new stuff in there if you haven't been in there in a while. And there's a new fishing report going up about every 5 minutes. We have regional tips in there. We have some new regional guides that we are adding in as well to share their smart fishing game plans. And of course, if you're not a member, what the heck are you waiting on? Someone to take you by the hand, help you save time and money every single month on your fishing. We're the only online fishing club that guarantees you will catch more fish and save money on your tackle, or it's completely free. Go to saltstrong.com right now to sign up. And current members, I'll see you in the community.
It's in my soul. Welcome to the Salt Strong Podcast, disrupting fishing entertainment as you know it. Prepare to laugh. Prepare to get to know fishing legends in a whole new and unfiltered way. And on occasion, you might even learn a thing or two about fishing. Here's your host, Joe Simons. Like diamonds.
Hello and welcome to the Salt Strong live stream and podcast. My name is Rich Natoli. I am one of the Salt Strong fishing coaches, and I am joined tonight by co-host Ed Gobo, the owner of Captain Hank's Tackle, the lovely and talented Ed Gobo. Ed, how you doing tonight?
Don't forget that. I'm doing good, Rich. How are you?
I'm doing well. I'm really excited about this one. We have gotten a lot of requests for information about the Chesapeake Bay, and what a great time of year to talk about the Chesapeake Bay, because the striper are popping off, and it's only going to get better. So I reached out to my network and I said, guys, who do you think would be somebody that would very knowledgeable about the Chesapeake and striped bass that might be interested to come on and help people to catch more fish? And Nino Aversa actually got back to me. He said, hold on, I don't know if he'll do it, but here's the guy. And wouldn't you know, when he sent me the information, I looked, I'm like, I know who this is. And I started looking through, I reached out to him, and he's coming on tonight. Before we jump into who, well, if you have read the title, you know who. Want to just say thank you to everybody who's already in the chat and watching right now. We're already up to over 60 people in the chat right now. We have I Feel Fishy, James Flynn, KB 7771, Jack West, and Tad, and
I got
Billy. I want to say, Billy, good to see you in there. Billy had a little bit of a health scare, and it's good to see him in there. So Billy Ackerman, great to see you, man. You just made my night. So everybody else, welcome. We don't know if you're in there if you haven't chatted, but we've got a lot of people here right now live. So as we go through this, want to make sure that all of you know it is live if you're watching on Monday night at 8 p.m. So if you have any questions for our guest or for Ed or for me, just put them in the chat. We'll do our best to get to it. Those that are on the replay, put the questions in the comments. We do go through all of the comments, and we will answer you. You can feel free to email me directly if you have any questions, rich@saltstrong.com. And then for those that are listening to the podcast when it comes out, the podcast does come out, the audio from these episodes every Friday morning at 5 a.m. So you can listen to it on the way to the boat, on the way to the beach, on the way to the backwaters, over the weekend. You can just use the email to reach out, or you can go to saltstrong.com, look in the fishing tips, and there is a page dedicated to this episode. I'd suggest you go there and put any comments there. Ed and I will look at that, and if you have any questions for Shawn, we'll make sure that we get in touch with him and let him answer directly for you. Did I miss anything?
No, I think we're ready to jump right in.
We are. And for this one, this is one of those guests. And I'll bring him on screen so you can see him, but I'm going to talk for a second because Shawn Kimbro is here. Shawn, it's good to see you. Let me get through this introduction. You are one of those guys where it's got to be read. I can't just do this off of the top of my head because it is just too much information. So I'm going to go through the background on Mr. Shawn Kimbro, lifelong angler, author of 3 popular fishing books, Chesapeake Light Tackle, An Intro to Light Tackle Fishing on the Chesapeake Bay, the right stuff, gear, and attitudes for trophy light tackle fishing, and how to catch Chesapeake panfish. They're inspirational books with a strong emphasis on environmentalism and ethical fishing, which Ed and I both love. That is an important part of everything that we talk about. Frequent speaker to fishing clubs, conservation groups, and environmental organizations, recognized across the Chesapeake region as a leading voice for stewardship within the community. Innovative and conservation-oriented techniques for both fly and light tackle fishing have been featured in, and get this list, Ed, ready? Washington Post, Baltimore Sun, the Annapolis Capital, Chesapeake Bay Magazine, Anglers Journal, Field and Stream, Saltwater Sportsman, and many others. He has a YouTube channel with over 1 million views on it, so you probably have seen him if you watch this channel, or if you've watched my channel, Fat Dad Fishing. You're probably familiar with him. Actively serves on the board for the Alliance for the Chesapeake Bay and Coastal Conservation Association, and is a member of the Mid-Atlantic Fisheries Management Council's Shad and River Herring Advisory Committee. So I'm telling you, Shawn, there are a lot of things that we're going to want to talk to you about in the next year. And
that's a heck of a list.
And you actually have a job too, where you teach and direct the sleep medicine program at George Washington University. So with all of that said, man, Shawn, welcome to the stream. Glad to have you.
Hey, man, thank you, Rich, Ed. I really appreciate you guys having me on. Wow, Salt Strong. Hey, what a fantastic community of anglers. Men and women, you've got so much diversity on that channel. It's just fantastic. And I just couldn't wait. When you asked me to do it, I'm like, well, heck yeah, I'll do it. I would love to do it. So thank you for that. Thanks for having me on. You know, it always scares the heck out of me whenever I get in front of this many fishermen. Because, you can be, or I can BS my way through about anything. But when you're talking to real fishermen, which your audience is, outstanding anglers all, well, then, they know they'll call you out for BS. So I'm going to try to limit that and just stick with the facts tonight if I can.
Yeah, they definitely know what they're talking about. Ed and I have been called out several times. They like to make fun of us, which is good because then we become a little bit of a shield for you. I have my issues that are well known, especially my inability to net fish properly while in a kayak. I've lost a lot of fish on video that way. But man, this is exciting. And this is the time of year. Well, there's 2 times a year to really talk about striped bass in the Chesapeake. And this is one of them, right? Yeah. So we're in the fall now and we've got the migration starting, and, it's hot and heavy up in the Raritan Bay area between Long Island and between New Jersey. And that's where they're catching just the huge fish, but it's also starting to kick off down in the Chesapeake. And it's only going to get better. Is that right?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, they're on the way here. Although some of my buddies, as we were talking a little bit before, are up there at Raritan Bay right now. In fact, Nick Garrett, who helped set this up for us, was just up there last weekend. And, of course, holding up 40-pound stripers, and jealous as can be. But they're coming. They're on the way. And typically, we call it Rocktober here, but November is our best month. And even into December, we get some nice stripers. And right now, it's all about kind of schoolies. If you get a 30, 35 incher right now, you're doing really well. But I had a day 2 years ago in December, actually, I think it was December the 7th, and 3 guys on the boat got a 50 incher. And that was just, I live on Kent Island. That was just about 10 miles south of here. So, yeah, bring them on, man. I know you guys like them up there, but send them on this way.
Yeah, well, we definitely love them up here. For those that are not aware, Ed is in New Jersey. I fish. I actually live in Pennsylvania, but I fish anywhere from Maryland up to New York. So Maryland, Delaware, New Jersey, New York. That's generally my home territory. So we're in the middle of them. So I'm pushing north. Ed likes to stay home. He doesn't like to go anywhere. So he's waiting for.
Listen, let me jump in real quick. I live in South Jersey. North Jersey and South Jersey are 2 different states. So I'm in South Jersey.
Right. And I'm in Pennsylvania, and I go to wherever the fish are. So I have been up to the Raritan out in the kayak, and it's amazing. That has quickly become, in my opinion, one of the best coastal, and I'm leaving the Chesapeake Bay out of this, and I'm leaving the Delaware Bay out of it, although it beats the Delaware Bay. The Raritan Bay, I think, has become really the hot spot for the migration every year. And boy, it kicked off early this year. I mean, we had Ian come through, and like 2 days later, there were 50 pounders being caught within, all within the bay. It's crazy. Absolutely crazy. But you said, Shawn, that right now you're focusing on the schoolies. So anything, let's say up to 35 inches, it's a big schoolie. But
yeah. So it's probably just the way it is up and down the coast. Is that right now we're mostly running around looking for birds, the kind of birds matter, especially here in the Chesapeake, because the big seagulls, they hatch in the spring, and then the young gulls are just getting to the age right now where they're starting to chase bait, but they're not really big enough to go after menhaden, so they're chasing glass minnows and bay anchovies and the little stuff, and there's little stripers on those. But those are the birds you want to just pass right on by. Don't fool with those. We're looking for those big herring gulls, the big gray-winged gulls that look like a pterodactyl out there, because they're looking for big bait. And big bait obviously means big fish. And so that's what we're looking for. But, I mean, that's kind of the pattern right now. It's not always what the pattern is here. I mean, we're going to talk about I'm sure a lot as we go forward here, but when it comes to Chesapeake Bay fishing, and especially light tackle fishing, which is what I do, and I define light tackle as just casting and retrieving lures.
Right.
We kind of have a reputation of just bird chasers, but it's a whole lot more than that. The Chesapeake Bay is a big place. I mean, it's 200 miles from Havre de Grace down to Cape May. Down to Cape Charles,
right?
The bridge tunnel, and over 12,000 miles of shoreline. That's a heck of a lot of country that you've got to cover. And some people look at the Chesapeake Bay as kind of a little ocean, and others look at it as a big lake. And I fall squarely into that latter category because I grew up on TVA lakes down in Tennessee, and I learned how to fish for stripers in lakes. And really, that's all it is. But you see everything. You see great big boats. It's not unusual to see 40-foot convertibles or something out there. And then you see kayaks. And I saw a guy on a homemade platform yesterday with a trolling motor out around the back. So,
Ed, was that you?
No, we saw one of them up here, though, over the summer.
Yeah.
No, it don't matter, man. Whatever gets you on the water, I've been there.
Mm-hmm.
I can remember nailing boards over a piece of styrofoam and trying to keep it floating just to get out there on the water to fish when I was a kid.
Well, it's worth it now. I mean, the fish are there. So you're talking about, okay, so really the one thing that I get asked a lot, and I'd like your take on this, is when you talk about the Chesapeake, it's really broken into three areas. So you have the upper, middle, and lower bay. And the middle bay, I think, is basically you're talking from the Bay Bridge, is the northern part of it. Are you seeing a difference? Can you break down right now at this time of the year? So early November, mid-November, what are you looking at for those three different areas when you're talking about striped bass? How is it different in the upper bay as compared to the lower bay?
Yeah, that's a great question, and there's a lot that goes into it. But the upper bay, if we talk about everything above the Bay Bridge where Route 50 goes across at Annapolis to Kent Island, where I am right now. So this time of year, and we may be a couple of weeks early here, we get big fish here first before they do farther south. And there's a lot of theories as to why that is. My theory, and I think it's been proven by some science, is they come through the C&D Canal. So they come down, they're coming down the ocean. They're Raritan Bay now. They're coming south, at least most of them are. And there's a population of fish that, for whatever reason, takes that shortcut through the C&D Canal. And then they start showing up. Give you some locations: Swan Point, Rock Hall, Hodges Bar, mouth of the Chester River, all the shipping channel all the way down to the Bay Bridge. So it won't be long before we start seeing those fish. Right now, we're getting a few, 30 inches, maybe a 35 every once in a while in that area. But it won't be long before we'll start getting consistently bigger fish in that area.
That's awesome.
Yeah, and that's where I'm fishing now, just because I know that's going to happen, and I want to be there. I've been lucky enough in the past to be on the water when those big fish come through, and when you see them start blowing up, man, it gets that heart thumping you guys, you've seen it, and you can't get there fast enough. Moving on south, so right now all the bait is coming out of the rivers. So as you guys know, the menhaden and herring and stuff, they kind of they spawn in the rivers. And the fry grow up in the rivers, and they start migrating out this time of year. They're headed toward warmer water south to the ocean, and as they're coming out, the stripers know that, and they're setting up ambush points around the mouths of the rivers. Well, south of the Bay Bridge, the biggest river mouth that I know of until you get down to the mouth of the Potomac is Eastern Bay. Now, Eastern Bay goes around the backside of Kent Island, and it's pretty big. It's 2 or 3 rivers there, the Miles River, the Wye River, and some other smaller tributaries come out of there. So that's a good place to fish right now, too, for that reason, because that's where the bait is coming out. Just starting to get some reports of bigger fish along the shipping channel. That's in deeper water. We usually don't see them until Thanksgiving back to November, but they're starting to show up now. On a little bit farther south, the Choptank River is another big river that comes out near Sharps Island. I just won a tournament down there last weekend, the catch and release division of the Choptank tournament. And they set us a boundary line. We can't go out of that river, and of course the fish pile up right on that boundary line. Be careful not to get past it. But we were fortunate enough to catch some nice fish and a lot of fish in that tournament last weekend. So that was fun. And then moving on south, so things are still a little slow. There are some fish down the mouth of the Potomac right now. And so I would say maybe that's still Middle Bay. And once you cross the Virginia line, we start, the Maryland guys at least start considering that lower bay, although it's probably not really. But right. They'll be there soon. And it's not as good down there yet, but won't be long before we start getting there. So that's kind of what's going on right now.
Yeah, I'm seeing a lot of redfish and speckled trout still down in the down near the Potomac and Elizabeth and everything, but it's not going to be long before they get down there and they make that turn.
Did you hear about are you hearing about our bull red bite in the summer here in August and September?
I have. Yes. And I wish I had been down there for it. Right now it's going on in Louisiana and really hot and heavy, but yes, I did hear about it. Now I have to give the Chesapeake guys a lot of credit because they kept it kind of quiet. You had to be listening to hear about it, but I saw a few pictures of some just beautiful bull reds down there.
Oh man, it's so. My buddies and I used to go to North Carolina. We go down to the mouth of the Neuse River in late summer just to get bull reds. Well, thanks to the water warming up, we've got them here in the Chesapeake Bay now. They come in the bay to spawn in late summer, and they eat big menhaden, 12-inch bunker. And when those things go off, my gosh, it looks like somebody dropped a nuclear bomb in the water or something. Yeah. And you can see them on a calm day. You can see them 5 miles away. And of course, being here right in the middle of metropolitan areas of Baltimore and Washington, D.C., everybody else knows about them too. So it's not unusual to see 100, 150 boats out there as catching on. What's saving us is that it's catch and release only. So, and I'm all about that, but a lot of people just want to catch fish. So we're not seeing a lot of the heavy hitting charter boats out there on them yet.
Right. Because if you can't keep it, then their clients complain, which, I get it. You're going to spend a couple $100 to get out there. You want to keep a fish. Okay. It's tough for those captains to justify that unless they limit out on something else. They say, look, got 2 hours left. We're going to do something special today.
Yeah. Well, what's cool is we fish with them we fish for them basically the same way we're fishing for stripers. We're using mostly soft plastics.
Yes.
And we'll size up our line a little bit and our rods, but still we're just casting lures into them. So yeah, that's a blast. It's really fun.
It is my favorite fish to target is redfish. Now I have not caught the big bull. Again, I'm mid-Atlantic, mainly fishing New Jersey. They come by every once in a while, but that right now is my favorite fish to catch, is a redfish. There's nothing that fights. It looks like a submarine coming by. Even the small ones, just the wake coming off of those things when they come through the flats. It's just amazing. It's amazing. I love it.
I need to get one.
Yeah. We got to get Ed on them. I'm about to pack him in the truck, and we're going to head south, and we'll follow you around. We'll find those bull reds.
I've got a buddy, Captain Jamie Clow of Eastern Shore Light Tackle Charters, who specializes in those bull reds. And man, you talk about, I fished with this guy for 17 years, and he's an excellent fisherman, but he's got those redfish dialed in. So if you come down this way and want to get on them, give Captain Jamie a call. He'll put you on them. He's on them better than anybody I know right now, or not right now, but has been. They've just moved south.
Well, when I come down there, I'll give you a call. We'll all go out together.
Let's go.
We'll grab the charter together.
We'll throw Scotty in the truck too. He needs a redfish in his life.
Yeah, this is Captain Scotty Sevens. He's a very popular guide up in the Ocean City, New Jersey area for sheep's head, striped bass, and he's one of those guys that is obsessed. I think when he was on with us before, and he said, "Have you ever been obsessed with a fish you've never caught?" And that's Captain Scotty with the redfish. So I feel that
here.
I definitely feel it.
I'll trade you trips, Scotty.
Well, there you go. He's probably going to. Yes, he's agreeing. He just agreed.
Let's do it.
Yeah. All right. So that's what. So it looks like. I first of all, I want to say I'm glad that you mentioned Eastern Bay, because that's where I plan on fishing next. Yeah. Well, I actually had planned to go down there last week, and the wind blew me out. And then I planned to go down this week, and it looks like the wind is going to blow me out. Again, I'm going to be out there on a kayak, but that's kind of a place that I've targeted as a great area. And for the same reasons that you said, you have all of these rivers coming together into this beautiful bay. And it is somewhat wind protected if you're in a boat. If you're in a kayak, it
is.
That open water can get really open and really windy quick.
Yeah, we figured that out last week.
Yeah, we took a trip and got blown out. It was not fun. And that was only 15 to 20 mile an hour winds, but it was cold and it was difficult. All right, so let's get back on the striped bass. So right now that you've gone through really well. Now, where are they specifically holding? It doesn't need to be today, but generally speaking, right now, are they typically holding in the shallows at the points? Are holding deep during the day, moving up into the shallows in the mornings and the evenings? What is your general trend that you would tell somebody to look for at this time?
Yeah, so this time of year, it's mostly current related. In the summertime, I would say, you're looking for shallow water, you're looking for underwater structure and points and any place that they can find ambush zones. But this time of year, at slack tide, you might as well, go to the bar or something. I've often joked that I'm going to open a bar in one of the lighthouses they have for sale around here and just call it slack tide. And everybody can go there because, they're sleeping. I work in sleep medicine, and I'm always interested in how different animals behave, and of course, especially fish. And there's been some research that shows when the tide goes slack, they get almost dormant. They just get down on the bottom and hunker down side by side. But this time of year, since they're feeding up for the winter, they're looking for food. And as soon as that current starts moving, they're on the move looking for that bait around the mouths of those rivers. So that's your key right now. Mouths of the rivers, find the bait. Find the bait, find them around the mouths of the rivers, you're going to find fish.
Okay. And what specific type of bait are you most excited when you see?
Yeah, so we call it peanut bunker. So bunker is menhaden.
Yep.
Lots of different names for them, but that most people call them bunker here. Peanuts because they're about the size of a peanut. So, anywhere from 2 inches up to 4 inches, sometimes 6 inches or so. That goes back to looking for those big birds. They'll put you on that big bait. So that's what you're looking for. I've got a video. Just put it up. It's on my Facebook page. And by the way, it's just, I think it's Shawn _Kimbro on Facebook. And send me a friend request. I'll accept it. If all you do is post politics and stuff, I'll probably mute you or sign off. but if you post fishing, I'm going to be all over it. So I just put a video up of some bunker we got in when we were tournament fishing, and there's this huge school. You can see the bait. The water is really clear, and the striper's just coming through and slashing through them, and we're catching fish in them, hooping and hollering, and having a great time. That's what we're looking for now. Later in the year and earlier in the year, that's why back to that big lake or little ocean concept. So in a lake, you're looking for underwater structure. Well, the Chesapeake Bay is just a drowned river. The river bed for the Susquehanna River and all the other rivers that feed into it, those river beds are still there. And so as a result, you've got underwater ledges, you've got points that come out, you've got all kinds of things that dissect the normal flow of current at a 90-degree angle. And that's what you're looking for. Look for those 90-degree angles. Anything that dissects that current so that the current has to either flow around, over, or under. That's a striper ambush point right there. That's what they look for. A good example is the Chesapeake Bay Bridge. It's a great place to fish because it dissects the normal flow of current at that 90-degree angle, and so there's always fish there. And that principle applies anywhere else on the bay too, especially underwater points, humps, ledges. So we're looking for that the rest of the time of year.
Yeah, I think a good point. That's an excellent point. And I think the Chesapeake really represents the first real open water fishing opportunity when you start heading up from Florida. And I'm not saying that there aren't bays and everything, but you fish the Chesapeake for striped bass in the open water, but you're fishing it like the guys in Florida are fishing the points and the choke points and the structure along the marshes or along the mangroves. You're looking for the same structure. It's just submerged. Right. Yeah. I mean, you're looking for all the current breaks, and it's not typically going to be the shoreline when you hit the Chesapeake. Now, in the rivers, yes. I mean, the rivers, yes, you do look still on the shoreline. You will have the striped bass coming right up to it, especially if you have some depth there and some current breaks. But it's really one of those things where I think navionics becomes extremely important, or your depth finder becomes really important because, as we all know, it all looks flat when you're on the boat, and you really have to look underneath and see what the heck is going on, because it doesn't take a big ledge underneath you to create a lot of current break down there, which is going to just stack those fish up. Yeah, exactly. And you mentioned navionics, and so electronics, as you guys know, and everybody listening knows, have come light years from when I started fishing. You can probably see up behind me there my old Lawrence little green box, which was actually my first fish finder. When I first moved up to the Chesapeake Bay, I didn't know what kind of boat to buy, and I had a 25-foot Sea Ray Express Cruiser, which had a little bit of fishing room in it, but it had a flasher built in on that thing, and I can still recognize fish on it. But what a difference that makes now that we're seeing all this active imaging and side scan and down scan, and I'm a big fan of it. I mean, you got to have it, to find the fish. It's funny. We've got Ed here, so we've got the youngin', and he was brought up on the on the digital stuff, and I had told a story in the past where our first fish finder on our boat, so this is when I was younger, was a Lowrance with the stylus, so it was paper. You'd have to wash the paper, and then you'd open the cover and you'd circle it real quick, and you'd try to write where you were when you see some fish so that you can come back, the next week. But if you're like me, you didn't have much money, so when that paper ran out, you just scrolled it, or you turned it around backwards and ran it through again. You had to do what you had to do, right?
I could imagine.
It was, but at the time it was revolutionary. You had the first, you had the Loran system then, which was, back in the day before GPS, and they couldn't, you got your numbers, but the numbers weren't very accurate because at that time the government thought that North Korea and Russia were going to take our technology and make guided missiles out of our Loran system. So, you'd try to get within a football field of your mark, and then you'd have to drive around and look at the stylus and see if you actually got over the drop that you were looking for. Exactly. A much different game now.
And Rich, you mentioned the fishing the rivers, and back in the summer, if you're fishing shorelines and stuff more, and that couldn't be any more true. I mean, that's absolutely true. I love topwater fishing. I don't know anybody who doesn't love topwater fishing. I mean, there's just something so exciting about watching the take, seeing that fish rise to your lure. And so once the water temperature reaches 60 degrees here, I'm working those points, throwing topwater plugs. 65 is a little better. And then we'll topwater fish pretty much all summer in low light situations. And then you can go out and, work the ledges later in the day. But that's where you want to be during the early morning and late evening, is throwing a topwater plug. Spooks or poppers. I like spooks. You can get an argument with about anybody about which one's the best topwater plugs, but usually I throw spooks to start out with. And just for those of you who don't know, and I know we got a lot of really good fishermen in here, but there's probably some people who are just coming in. A spook is designed to walk the dog. It goes back and forth and back and forth. And when you're doing it right and it's calm, it leaves a wake that comes out like this, and it looks like a snake or an eel or something on the surface.
And there's nothing more satisfying than getting that cadence down to where it's just perfect back and forth.
Yeah, absolutely. And then if it's a little rough or if fish are really aggressive, I'll go with a great big popper, stillwater smack it maybe. And by the way, my favorite spook here on the Chesapeake is Lonely Angler, which is a lure made up in Boston, but the family, some of the family is here along the Chesapeake Bay, and they just make they have a through wire zipster that's good for big fish, and then they have just the regular zipster that's good for walking the dog for it's not through wired. But man, those are great spooks. I think you guys would probably like those where you're fishing it.
I'm a fan of spooks, definitely. The spook and the spook junior, depending on what size bait's in the water. But let's bring it back. Let's bring it back to the peanut bunker that you're looking for right now. You're going to be fishing a lot of subsurface though, right? With soft plastics.
Yeah, absolutely.
Okay. And what are you going to be tossing when you're tossing those soft plastics out there?
Yeah. So I got this lure is a little beat up, but because I just pulled it right out of my boat and brought it in here. But I don't know if you can see that.
Yeah.
But I think that's a Z-Man soft plastic. We have two local lure manufacturers here in the Chesapeake area that make soft plastic lures, BKDs and Bustum Baits, and they're both good. Every soft plastic has a little different characteristics. One of the things I like about Z-Mans is that they're very buoyant. They float. And so you don't want them to float on the surface. You want them to sink, and that's why we'll use a jig head like that. And you vary the size of the jig head depending on how fast the current is, how windy it is. You want something that you can pretty much fill the bottom with. But the buoyancy of that Z-Man, and there's some of the other lures that are buoyant too, kind of makes it sink slower. And so stripers always hit on the fall.
Right.
So you want that slow sink, and then it's a hard snap up, and then let it sink again, and then be alert with a tight line so that you're feeling it. But soft plastics, if you're just getting in, paddle tails have a little more action. I don't use paddle tails too much just because I like to put my own action in the lures, and I've got a really pronounced snap. We call it snap jigging. You can hear the rods swishing through the water when you're doing that. So you match the size of the soft plastic to the size of the bait you're seeing. And I'm always trying to move those fish up. So if they'll hit a 5-inch bait, I'll move them up to 6 inches. 6 inches, they go to 7 inches, all the way up to a 12-inch hoagie or something. If that's what they want, I'm going to keep going up. In fact, I had one day, me and a couple of my fishing buddies, Rich Jenkins and Jamie Clow, we were fishing in February, and we had 40 fish over 40 inches that day. And we were gluing 10-inch lures together to make 20-inch lures to try to weed out the 40 inchers so we could get 50 inchers.
That's crazy.
What a problem to have. I've had too many 40 inchers. Let's start gluing baits together. I love that. I absolutely love that. You brought up a great point though, Shawn, about the striper hitting it on the drop. I had a question today from somebody just saying, look, I've been out there and I'm catching these striped bass on topwater. And he was talking backwater marsh fishing. And he said, I can catch them on topwaters, no problem. I cannot get the bites on the soft plastics. I said, it's your retrieve. You're going to want to vary that cadence, and you're going to you want to put a pause in there. You want to put a jerk in there so that it moves and it stops. And that's where you're going to get them all. The dart, you're using a dart spin, you're reeling that in. Don't just do the straight reel like you see a lot of people doing. It's different. It's different than when you're fishing for speckled trout or even weak fish. You almost always have to put a pause in there, because they just follow it. And I have on video, I think it's coming out next week, where I'm reeling in, I think it was a dart spin. I'm reeling it in, and I got to the point where I was going to cast again. So I'm just reeling it the rest of the way in, and I wasn't paying attention. And then I saw a fish behind it, and all I did is stop, bang. And it took it about 3 feet from the tip of the kayak. And I was thinking, I got to pay more attention, because I was just doing a steady reel. I'm never going to get a hit that way. And the second I saw it and stopped, it hit it. It just nailed it right there. And I think a lot of people miss that. They think, especially with paddle tails, think you can throw it out and just do the steady retrieve, and maybe you'll get a bite. But man, I'm going to put this up here from this comment from KB7771. Always on the pause. Yeah. Not always, but most often on that pause.
And a lot of times, I mean, when not like that fish hit you paused it so he would hit it. But a lot of times when you're retrieving that lure, especially small fish, will swim up behind it and grab the tail, and you get a lot of tail strikes that way. But a big striper almost always hits the lure head first. And in fact, on my boat, I often tell my fishing buddies that a fish doesn't count if they catch the fish in the bottom of the mouth, because that means it probably was chasing the lure and they didn't catch it on the jig, on the snap, which will be hooked in the top of the mouth. That's just, kind of joking around about that, but you're absolutely right. Now, in shallow water, like your buddy was talking about in the marshes, it's easy to use too much weight in a situation like that. You don't want that thing pounding the bottom all the time. Right. You want it kind of, doing that, kind of arching like a flutter hook. A flutter hook is a hook that has weight on the side on the hook itself, and not a jig head like that. That works good in shallow water.
Yeah, I've actually been using those. I think they're Haas Helix. So they're weighted hooks. They're about an eighth of an ounce, and that's enough. And I'm using Z-Mans quite frequently. Northeast Jig Company. Ed, you use bougie baits. So I mean, there are all these different soft plastics, but I think that once you hit the mid-Atlantic, I think those weighted hooks kind of go away, and people don't realize what they're missing and what you can do with a bait when you have just a very light weighted hook. You still get plenty of range with some of these soft plastics. I mean, you can launch them with an eighth of an ounce, but you're not, as you said, pounding that bottom. You're not picking up the dead grass on the bottom. You're not kicking up all the sand. It's not looking unnatural. You can just flutter that right over the bottom, and man, that's just really appealing to these fish when they're cruising those flats.
Yeah, absolutely. And sensitivity is so important in that. My dad used to have this saying. He would say, "You got to think down the line," and I love that, because it's just this unbroken frequency that goes from, and let me show you this. So I love bait casters because you can reset your lure into the strike zone. But I usually keep 2 fingers right up here on the blank of the rod, and I also like an open reel seat. So I've also got another finger or 2 on the blank of the rod down there. So that increases my sensitivity. I'm using a fast or extra fast rod. That way it transmits the frequency really good. And braided line, 10-pound test. That day we caught 40 fish over 40 inches. That was 10. We were using 10-pound test, and I've caught 2 fish over 50 inches, both on 10-pound tests. That seems like that's counterintuitive for big fish, but you increase your sensitivity. And especially when you've got a lot of tide, even the difference between 10-pound test and 20-pound test, when you've got 50 feet or more of line out there, you're getting a lot of sway in that current. You're getting a big old loop in your line, which makes it harder for that strike to get transmitted back to you. And then you got to jerk all that slack out when you set the hook. So smaller is better, and you can fight a fish. I've never fought a striper longer than 10 minutes or so.
Right.
You get them in. I mean, that's one of the criticisms for light tackle is you're fighting the fish too long, but that's not how. In reality, that's not how it works.
Yeah, I think a lot of people, if you have 10-pound test, they act like it's going to break at 8 pounds. Well, no, it's probably going to break at 18 pounds. You know, the breaking strength is usually well over. Your knot is probably going to go before that braid goes. But
always what happens. So,
you should easily be able to be landing, 20, 30 plus pounders on 10-pound test, even with some significant drag on there.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yep.
I mean, don't try to lift the fish out of the water with it, but you can fight without a problem with that. And usually medium rods, not even medium heavy. Now we'll go to medium heavy when we're fishing for redfish or bigger stripers. But we're typically using just medium extra fast rods. Same thing we're using in the lakes for black bass.
Right.
Basically the same gear that we're using more than anything.
Now, to go back to, there's a question that came through going back to the bait and menhaden. Virginia on the Fly is interested in your perspective on the impact that menhaden reduction fishing has had. Particularly in the lower and middle bay.
Man, don't get me started.
That's why I'm shaking my head. I know this is going to be a big topic.
I mean, I'm not afraid to name names. The company is Omega Protein out of Reedville. And Maryland doesn't let them do it, but Virginia does for whatever reason. Fortunately, we've got some politicians in Virginia now who are getting on board and kind of putting pressure. But Omega Protein is a Canadian company. It's not even a United States company. And they're coming in here and getting millions and millions and millions of metric tons of menhaden, not just out of the Chesapeake Bay, but also up the coast, and taking those out. And there's also significant bycatch when they're doing that. And you want to know a big problem with striper fishing right now and why the striper stock is declined so much? A lot of that is because of that one Canadian company taking all those fish out, and it needs to be stopped. That's my opinion.
I'm going to chime in and tell you I agree 100%. I'm going to share with you some stories that have come up. Now, you said they go up the coast. Oh yeah, they do. They've been passing us up in South Jersey, Central New Jersey, Northern New Jersey, and they just kind of drive by. And one of the captains around here posted some pictures of a 2-mile long dead fish for 2 miles straight, packed, all weak fish. This is a critically endangered fish stock, all weak fish, and it's right behind the Omega boats. And they act like there's no significant bycatch. But when you start seeing 50-pound striped bass floating with the weak fish, you know what they're doing. They're pulling the nets on, and then they're dumping the fish. And 2 miles. Can you imagine what that just did to this critically depleted stock of weak fish that had finally started getting positive recruitment in the past 2 years? And now all of a sudden Omega rolls through because they fished out the Chesapeake. Now they're heading up to Block Island. We
have hardly any weak fish in the bay anymore. And there's your reason right there. Yeah. I mean, there's a few, you might catch some that, the size of your hand or something, but not anything like it used to be. Even 25 years ago, I talked to guys who used to catch them. I've only lived on the Chesapeake for 17 years, and I've seen even a steady decline during that. Now, we do have menhaden in the bay. I mean, it's not like they're all gone. They still come up here, and they're there. And stripers, I think stripers would rather eat a little bit in water that they like than a lot in water they don't like. And menhaden have more of a tolerance for low oxygen and higher, lower salinity and more turbulence than stripers do. So you'll see schools of unmolested menhaden sometimes. But it's nothing like it used to be. When Captain John Smith was here, when he first discovered the Chesapeake Bay, he said that they were so thick you could scoop them up with frying pans, and those days are gone.
They are gone. They're definitely gone. And you can feel free to name names, because I think Omega is a big problem, and you are going to have a lot of support for that view all the way up the coast. I mean, I'm connected with quite a few people up through the Mid-Atlantic and up into the Northeast, and I've been watching their posts, and it's like, here they come. And I can't tell you how many pictures and videos of Omega coming through, followed by the dead fish floating behind them. It's sad. Yeah, it's just sad.
They try to. I told you, don't get me started, but they try to make it a jobs thing. We've got a population of Virginia people that wouldn't have jobs if it's not for that. Well, for Christ's sake, pay them. We could pay those guys what they're making, what Menhaden's paying. I mean, what Omega Protein is paying them, which isn't much. We fishermen, just with our license fee, increase our license fee, we'll pay them for 20 years not to work.
Right.
Get them off the pay. There's a lot of ways you can solve that problem without putting people out of work.
I agree. You just have to get creative. And look, government is known for not being creative. So that's kind of where we are. Let's wait for the government to make it better. But we'll leave
so
it
after I whack the hornet's nest, we got another question here.
Oh no. Good one.
When you snap jig, what test braid do you use?
Yeah, we talked about it. I'm using 10-pound test almost all the time. But I'm also putting a leader on there. I don't know if you can see it probably can't see the leader, but I'm using a leader that's about 2 feet. You want that leader to be long enough to clear the dorsal fin of the biggest fish you think you're going to catch. And the reason for that is because braid is not very abrasion resistant. But I'm using fluorocarbon leader most of the time, just because it's stripers are not that leader shy, but whatever we can do to help helps. So 25, 30-pound leader. And the reason you want it long enough to clear the dorsal fin of the biggest fish you think you're going to catch is when you hook up a good striper, first thing that happens is it takes off away from the boat, and it's going to be pull and drag. And eventually that fish is going to tire against that drag. And when it gets tired, it's either going to do one or two things. It's either going to roll or it's going to dive. And if it rolls or dives, either way, then that dorsal fin is going to come in contact with your line. And you can feel it pop, 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 pop as it slides over the back of your line. In a big fish, you'll think it broke off because you feel that pop. But that's all that is. It's just sliding across that dorsal fin. And so that's why you want that leader on there. It's not a shock leader. It's just to keep from breaking your line off. And it also helps with abrasion resistance if you're fishing pilings or docks or rocks or whatever.
It's a scary feeling.
Yeah,
it is. Popping.
Yeah, you've had, it. You've had, and you're like, oh, and then you feel the weight again. All right, it's still there.
Yeah, because often you do lose the weight when it does that, because it changed direction on you. If you think it popped off and you stop, you're now slack line fishing, which is also not a good thing. I'm going to agree on those leaders. I typically go a little bit longer, but I think your point is outstanding point. You better have enough to get over that dorsal. Otherwise that's a piece of structure that it will hit almost every single time. It's going to go raking across that at some point during the fight.
And their gill plates are very sharp too, so it'll also break off on a gill plate if you're not careful.
Yes,
you need that.
Excellent point.
I make a lot of comparison with bass fishing, and I'm a big fan of bass fishing. I do a lot of freshwater fishing too. And I watch the tournament, and if you notice in the bass tournament world, they're graduating up, heavier rods, heavier line right now. But that's because look at the lakes they're fishing. Mostly they're fishing those southern TVA lakes that have grown up now. And those lakes started out as nothing because they cleared everything, but now they've grown up with lots of weeds, lots of stumps, lots of trees, stuff there, lots of obstruction. So they've got to horse those fish out. We're fishing open water, so it doesn't matter. So we can fight those fish very quickly with a lot lighter gear.
Yeah, I agree. It's funny. you see people, we've had people on this in the past before it was on Salt Strong on this show, and people saying, I use lighter gear when I'm surf fishing. And people, the reaction is commonly, whoa, that's opposite. You should be using heavier gear. And I think it was Dan Mancari was talking about it. And he said, well, what am I going to hit? I'm on the beach. I'm not going to rake across anything. It's just me and the fish. You just time it with the waves. You don't need the extra leader for that. You don't need the extra pound test. You just pull it in when the wave comes. And it's a great point. But when you're fishing the backwaters, like bridges, if you're fishing a bridge and you're fishing docks, then you need to increase that. You need to increase the leader and everything. But it's a great point. And if you're not fishing that, go light. Go really light. Now, I want to show Shawn so that you see this. Pay attention to less obvious things he is saying. Yeah. Because there is some huge nuggets being dropped. I agree. I'm trying to pick out some of them, but I can't get all of them. Otherwise, we're going to be talking for 8 hours here.
Well, that's a great compliment from a very good fisherman, and I appreciate that, Scotty.
Yeah, there's a ton in here. There's a ton. Did you have any questions before I keep going?
No, we're good. I'm just taking it all in.
Okay.
I'm monitoring the chat. I'm trying to see if there's some other stuff.
Yeah, throw them my way. And while you're doing that, this might be a good time for me to plug my books.
Yeah, I was going to ask you that. But you know what? Now's a better time to do it than when I was going to. So why don't you talk about those books?
Well, so when I first moved here 17 years ago, I started a blog called Chesapeake Light Tackle. And I should tell you this, when I first moved here, moving here from Tennessee, you might be able to hear a little bit of a Southern accent left, although when I go down to Tennessee, they say I sound like a Yankee. but I thought stripers were a different species than what we had in the lakes back in Tennessee. And because a lot of the fishermen, most of the fishermen were trolling great big umbrella rigs with broomsticks. And I thought that's how you had to do it. So I went all out and got all that stuff and went out there and I did catch some fish. And then one day I happened to troll through a blitz with birds diving and fish breaking. And I set some of my top water stuff in under the cabin of the boat and I grabbed it and started throwing and catching fish. And I never went back after that. So I started blogging it all as I went along. And that blog turned into the first book, which is called Chesapeake Light Tackle. And this is it. It's just kind of an introduction. All the things that we've been talking about, that's what it's about. And I go into a lot more detail on those specific subjects that we've mentioned, the rods, the gear, locations, that 90-degree angle. Followed that up a little bit later with the second book, which is The Right Stuff, which is it takes it to the next level, I guess. Once you've got familiar with everything, you've got the gear. Well, then you want to know, how to refine your techniques, when to use top water, when to use jigs, what size jigs to use. And also in that book, I talk about this strike triggers concept, which is not something I came up. It's something fishermen have known forever. If you look in my background here, I collect antique lures and stuff, and you can learn a lot. I liked your introduction where one of the fishermen said, you should never stop learning. I know a lot of people who stop learning and they're not very good fishermen.
Right.
You should never stop learning. And it's very valuable to go back and look at what fishermen have known for years and incorporate that into what you're doing. Also, obviously incorporating the latest technology and whatever the latest and greatest is. I do think fish learn after a while. But that strike trigger is just, you take the 5 reasons that I know of why fish bite and you combine that with the different things that make them bite. Like the 5 senses that they feed, why they feed, and you put all those things together to make to make it possible to do your best possible presentation at any one subject. So that's the second kind of nutshell version of the second book. And the third book is Chesapeake Panfish. And by the way, I should say this: I'm getting ready to release a third I'm sorry, a 10-year anniversary edition of Chesapeake Light Tackle, hopefully by Christmas, which is going to be updated a little bit. All the concepts are just the same, but I want to put more information in there about bull redfish, and we're also getting more cobia in the bay now, so some more information about that. The panfish book is just about, I love pan fishing. And man, I mean, in the Chesapeake, we've got yellow perch, white perch, spot, lots of different panfish species, and I like freshwater panfish. Fishing for little fish like panfish will make you a better striper fisherman, because it's all about tuning in, thinking down the line, figuring out what that strike feels like. And in that book, I listed every possible way that I could think of to catch panfish.
Yeah.
And I love it, man. I went yellow perch fishing yesterday. I love pan fishing. So
I'll tell you what, if you want to catch more striped bass and you want to go for panfish, just catch some white perch. You can get good at white perch at that scale and then just kind of blow it up. You know where the striped bass are. You literally know where to find them. If you know where to find those, I'm not saying they're the same exact spot, but it's a different, just scale it up and you're going to find a lot of similarities there.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more. And because they're the same family of fish. They're very closely related and they behave very similarly. Yeah, and mostly good perch fishermen I know are also good striper fishermen.
Yeah, the perch get angry just like the striped bass do when you get that hook in their face. And you can do it on little bass gear. You don't have to bring out the big striper gear and everything.
Little trout rods, man. That's the best. They are so much fun on trout rods.
Yeah,
they are. The only thing I don't like about the trout rods is the ones that I have are a little too soft. I'd still like to have a little bit of a better, faster action on them. I don't seem to have any fast action trout rods.
You need the noodles, man. Just use a noodle. It's a good time.
I guess. I'm looking forward to doing some perch fishing too. But again, I'm going to be heading down to Eastern Bay at some point soon.
Well, holler at me this way, and I'll tell you what's going on the water before you get there.
Sounds good. I just found that is just such a beautiful place to go, and it's close for me. I'm not telling everyone you need to go there. I'm just saying I'm going there because I can commute there. I can be there in 2.5 hours, 2 hours and 40 minutes actually.
Right now, the other side of so Kent Narrows is kind of the dividing line between Eastern Bay and then it's the Chester River on the other side. Chester's good right now too for striper. So you can go either way. If you put in there at Kent Narrows, you could go either way and probably find fish right now.
That's fairly close to where I put in. Yeah.
November kind of lowers the learning curve here on the Chesapeake. And so it's a lot easier to catch stripers in November than it is any other time, which is, we were talking earlier, we like stupid fish.
Yeah.
And this time of year, they're a little bit dumber than they are other times.
I'm never going to complain about an easier fish to catch. You know what? I don't need to go out and prove I'm the best in the world. I already know I'm not. I just want to go out and get some tight lines, hook up some nice fish, and let them go. That's what it's all about for me. All right, so that's November. Let's quickly jump into December. Now you're in Maryland. So when does it close? Doesn't it close on the 27th of December?
Yeah, I think so. I can't remember this year. I think it's a little earlier this year. It might be around the 15th, but don't quote me on that because I'm not exactly sure. We've had to do some conservation measures to ease up on stripers a little bit. So I think it might be a little earlier than that. But that said, you can still catch and release. You can still target stripers. You just can't keep up until March. Now in March, they've made it now where we can't target stripers at all. But during the winter months, oh man, we got big fish here. I mean, we start getting bigger fish. I told you about that day in December where we caught 3 fish over 50 inches, and that's the big fish start coming in, and most of them stay all winter. And so a lot of our fishing, then we go to the warm water discharges. Once the water gets really cold and you're not getting them out on the channel, there's not a lot of bait around. Then we'll start fishing the warm water discharges. And there's a lot. Any industrial source, it doesn't even have to be an industrial source, it can be a creek or anything that it raises that water temperature even a couple of degrees as it comes into the bay. will attract bait fish, and that bait fish attracts stripers, and that's where we get some of our biggest fish of the year.
Man, that's interesting. I didn't realize that you could still target it then at that point in the year. So it's kind of the opposite of New Jersey. You can't target at all in the backwater striped bass between January 1st and March, right? Like you can't even target. Now people go in and they pretend they're going for bluefish, but there are no bluefish, so we know what they're actually doing. But then they have to release. I'm not going to advocate for that. I actually think that's wrong. You shouldn't do it. But we don't. But our spring, once it's open, it's open, right? So we're good for the rest of the year. So you have some different regulations down there. Of course, the striped bass thing, they can't figure out anything that's consistent because you have different limits, different sizes, different slots. We got some ridiculous bonus fish program up in New Jersey.
We agreed we weren't going there, Rich.
I know. I said I didn't want to talk about this with Ed. I was like, I don't want to talk about it. And I said, look, you need to read his bio because you're going to get him going. I said, that's not a first conversation topic. So maybe we should go past that. But I guess the whole point is we're talking about a lot of different areas here. And even in the Chesapeake, we're talking about multiple states. So people really need to be absolutely positive of what they're allowed to do and when they're allowed to do it, because this is a fishery that cannot support people going out and messing up and accidentally killing fish when they're protected for certain reasons, like spawning, which is really why they're protected in the Chesapeake. They're protected when they're spawning. So I'll just leave it at that. Ed, thank you for reminding me we shouldn't.
Yeah, absolutely right. But we can target fish here in the winter. We can target stripers here in the winter up until the 1st of March, and then the season closes for no targeting at all, which incidentally, that's a great time of year for perch fishing, yellow perch and white perch, and because they're spawning during that time too, and they're in the creeks, and that's just a whole lot of fun. So I don't mind that at all.
Oh, I'm definitely going to be down there doing that in the winter. It gets tough. It gets tough when, further north. You got these New York guys and Rhode Island and Massachusetts, even New Jersey, where it's all you can do is blackfish. Because the striped bass, they have moved into the Chesapeake at that point. They've gone up the Hudson, and you can't catch them off of New Jersey with any consistency. Bluefish aren't around, so it's all blackfish, and that's really all that you can do. And that means for a lot of people, because they move offshore, you have to get on the charter boats and you have to go out. But if you can find a place where you can get on some perch, man, that can just get you through the entire winter. You can keep fishing. Oh, I love it. Ed, you're coming with me.
We could go perch fishing right here in the river.
I know.
We did it over the winter.
Get a dry suit. We're going. We're definitely going.
I'll come up there and go with you. I'd love to see some new perch water.
Oh yeah, there is some nice perch water up here. Absolutely, there's some really nice places.
Some good spots.
Yeah, Ed's the one to talk to. One of the ones to talk to about that. Scotty probably knows a few too because he's in that area. All right, so we're at an hour. We could go for another, as I calculate it right now on the back of the napkin, another 74 hours of conversation if we wanted to.
Don't with a good time.
Yeah. Before we're finished, we could go forever. What are some things, and this is kind of why we wanted to focus on this time, right? I mean, we're talking a huge fishery, huge species. We could literally have 1,000 shows on this, which is why YouTube channels like yours get 1 million views because you can't get enough. But what are some things that you think would be helpful to people that are going to be targeting these striped bass up until, let's say, the 15th of December, or let's say just through the end of December down in the Chesapeake? What are some things that you would want people to know?
Yeah, well, probably the most important thing is to develop a good network of other anglers. And you guys are doing that right now with Salt Strong. And right. I mean, if you look around, the people who are going to be watching this podcast and are people who are talking on the message board or the Facebook group, they make friends because, I've got a job, obviously, and most of us do. And we just have to fish when we can. We can't be out there all the time, but somebody's out there pretty much all the time. And so if you develop a good network, a good circle of trust, people that, you feel like you can get a reasonably accurate report. Somebody said, I think it was, might have been John Girac, who said fishermen are the most reliable forms of liars. And that's probably true. And, but most, if you've got a good circle of trust of people that will give you a reasonably accurate report, then you've got an idea of where to go. We've talked about, and I mentioned some spots here, and I'll probably get some feedback from some of my angling buddies about some of the spots that I mentioned. But we've talked about some of those spots where things are hot right now, but that's always changing. It's always fluid. So make friends, go to the fishing clubs, the tackle shops, get to know people. And make friends. And so that's a good way, to kind of figure out where to fish. The other thing is, you can learn a lot from books, and I'm an author, so I want you to get books, but there's no substitute for time on the water. And if you can get a good fishing guide, and we've got some great light tackle guides here on the Chesapeake, and a lot of these guys came up light tackle fishing just like I did, and most of them have been doing it, the last 10 years or so, because things have changed quite a bit in the last 10 years, and there's some experts. And so go out with somebody. You'll learn a lot going out. And a lot of these guides here do walk-on trips, which $150, $175 a day. Go out there, fish all day long, and learn a lot. So that's probably two things that I would start with. Get the right gear. I mean, you can go out there with an ugly stick and monofilament, and you'll catch fish, especially in November. But if you get the right stuff, get quality gear with the right size that's appropriate for the fish that we're catching, you'll feel more strikes, and you'll know when you're getting bites, and you'll catch more fish as well. And so I guess that's three things that I would list as priorities.
Excellent. I'm going to chime in on the network and just say I'm 100% in agreement with you. Nobody catches more fish than a fisherman with a network. You just have all that extra information, and you're right. Salt Strong is a huge network, 35,000 people sharing reports in a private board. And they don't say, I was fishing this rock or I was fishing this channel, but they do say, here's the trend. The redfish were holding in 4 feet of water. They were feeding here, and here's the baits I was using. They were on the wind-blown side, the wind protected, whatever it is. So, if you're a Salt Strong member, that's a great place to go. If you're not, reach out to other people that are fishing and start sharing information. Again, you don't have to give up your secret spots. It's not what I'm talking about. I'm talking about the trends.
Yeah, don't give up your secret spots on the internet, for Christ's sake.
Be very careful.
Unless you want 500 people there or 35,000 people there the next day.
Exactly. And I think people very quickly realize it's not about the spot. It's about the conditions. And then you can find spots that have similar conditions, and you can find your own spots. Yeah. And then I do like your comment about the guides. I think a lot of people underestimate the power of learning from a professional one-on-one. So if you're going to an area, if it's a new fishery to you and you just want to learn, it is worth the investment to go out and find a good guide, one who wants to teach. Look back through the different guides that we've had on this channel. They've all been chosen for that reason to come on as guests. So you can check on Salt Strong and their lives. You can check on Fat Dad Fishing channel on YouTube, which is where the show used to be. And you can see the guides there. We've got a couple of them tonight watching and in chat, including, as we've mentioned several times, Scotty Sevens, if you want to get out with him. But yeah, I love your points. I love your information. And as was pointed out, there was a lot more information here than I think people realize. So
Big time.
There were a couple of things I'm going to go back and re-listen to that, because there was a little something there that is going to get me to look at things a little bit differently. And I consider myself to be a pretty good striped bass fisherman, but I learned a ton tonight, and I think anybody should have learned something tonight.
and vice versa. I mean, you can't talk to other people without learning something, and I appreciate you guys' input too, because you're absolutely right with everything that you've said, and there's like I said, if you stop learning, you stop catching fish, and so keep an open mind. I've seen people go out a lot. In fact, on some of my best fishing days, I've had people pull up and they're having a good time. They're both full of fish and they're smoking and joking and stomping beer cans in the bottom of the boat and playing the radio. They got Black Sabbath going at full volume, and maybe they're catching some little fish here and there. And they're having a great time, but they don't have any idea of how good it could be if they were just stealthy. Be stealthy. Right. And I'm sure there's a lot I don't know too. And there's a lot that I want to learn. And I'm looking forward to more episodes of your podcast so I can tune in and pick up as much as I can.
I appreciate me too. I learn a lot from the guests and I appreciate it. So everybody, I want to thank everyone for stopping by tonight. That was live. I want to thank everyone who's watching the replay. Put in the comments on the replay. If you have any questions, any comments, if there are other things that you want to see in the future, do this every Monday night at 8:00 Eastern live. And then it comes out on a podcast on Fridays at 5 a.m. So if there are people that that you fish with, if you want to start building the network, I'd appreciate sharing this out to people so that they know we're doing this. This is new to Salt Strong. Salt Strong did not in the past do live streams or a lot of content on the Mid-Atlantic and Northeast. And we're trying to get that going. So any help that you guys can give would be greatly appreciated. So with that said, we do have a guest coming in next week. Not 100% confirmed. However, it looks like we are going to be talking about trolling for striped bass. It's something that Shawn does not do. Something that I do not do very often. Actually, I don't know when I ever have really done it. But it is a very popular way, especially along the coast, to go out and target these beautiful fish. So we're going to have a guest coming on, I believe, next week to talk about that. The week after, Ed is taking off. He said, "I'm done. I need a day off." So we're going to have an Ask the Fishing Coach podcast where we're going to bring on multiple Salt Strong fishing coaches from different regions all up and down the East Coast. So people can come on and just ask questions about the different fisheries, the different species, anything you want to ask about. So all of that is coming up. Shawn, thank you again for coming on. You can be sure I'm going to try to fish with you, and I am going to try to get you to come back on multiple times. So
well, thank you. Thanks so much for having me, and everybody out there, look me up on my YouTube channel. I'm active on Instagram and not as active on Facebook, but I do have a Facebook page, and I'm posting pictures there and telling stories as well. Lots of conservation content as well.
Yes, which I love. And your YouTube channel is Shawn Kimbro, correct?
That's right. Just search Shawn Kimbro. It'll come up. And I should mention this, during the pandemic, when everything was closed, I did a series of very short videos called the Chesapeake Minute, where I just took one subject and I tried to limit everything to at least a minute or no more than 2 minutes. It's just a series of fishing tips. And I think there's 42 different ones. So you can take each one of those and just, if you got a subject, you want to see some knots or you want to look at rods, which, by the way, I failed to mention my JLS custom rod, which Ron and Jamie Lynn Buffington are making here locally, which are fantastic light tackle rods for both topwater and jigging. But yeah, so in that series, I break all that stuff down. Short and sweet, to the point. If you're like me, you got an attention span of about 2 minutes. If you made it all the way through this, I admire you. I would probably be fast forwarding, but I appreciate you doing it. But that's the reason that I put that together. So take a look at that.
Awesome.
I do have one more question before we go. Where can Rich go to get your books for my Christmas gift?
You can get them from my website, which is ChesapeakeLightTackle.com, and they will come very quickly. You can get them from Amazon. We do our own order fulfillment for Amazon. When I say we, that means my wife. And so she always mails the next day, or at least 2 days, if it's a weekend or something. So either one of those sources are probably good. And I also have a digital version of it on Amazon too. So just search my name. It'll come up.
That's great. And I want to get the updated version when it comes out in December.
Yeah, I'm going to do hard copies first. I mean, just hardcover copies first, and then we'll do paperbacks first of the year. So,
well, fishing books are hardcover for me. That's where I spend the money. Yeah.
Right.
Business books, those are audio books. I don't need those. I don't need those around. But when we start talking about fishing, yeah, that deserves some shelf space. So, yeah. Awesome. So thank you very much again, Shawn. Ed, thanks again for this week.
Yeah. It's been good.
Everybody, thanks for tuning in. We'll be back next week. So until next week, until next episode, get out there, get on the water, get some tight lines.
Let's go fishing.
'Cause fishing, it's in my soul.